So Shiva is in a form called Banalinga. So it's like a conical stone sort of a form, which you get from Omkar Kund, Narmada River. The way Shankaracharya got these different groups together is by undertaking what is called as Shankara Vijaya. That's like a pilgrimage of sorts that Shankaracharya went on, which is called Shankara Vijaya, where he kind of went across the country talking to these leaders of different styles of worship.
Namaskar, welcome to Clyde Samvada, brought to you by the Hindu Temple of Scotland. Today we have our guest Dr. Sreevas with us. Namaskar, Doctor.
Namaste, Shubji.
How are you?
Good.
So today's episode is a follow-up episode. So as in the very first postcard when we talked about the Sankalpa, we just left it to the part where we were just going to talk about Devata Upasana, but then we left it for another one. Yes. So today is the one there where we are going to talk about the Devata Upasana once the Sankalpa has been taken. So Dr. Sreevas, let's start with the word itself. What the Devata Upasana means.
Excellent question, right? So, Devata, God. Easy enough. Upasana will split into two parts. Upa, asana. Upa as in near, asana as in sitting. Okay? So when you say Devata Upasana, it's like sitting near God.
Okay.
Or in other words, worship. That is what Devata Upasana means.
Alright. So let's say someone has taken up a Sankalpa, but when we come to a temple setting, then there are different devatas around. So how does this culture came into the picture? If you could just light on that.
If you think about the sort of 700 ADs of the world, Adi Shankaracharya was around that time.
Okay.
So when Adi Shankaracharya was going to different parts of India and looking at how worship is done in different parts of India, there was multiple issues within the worship forms.
Okay.
So, one, there was conflict between the different forms of worship. So in the sense that there were people who were thinking that their God is above other gods. I mean, like this conflict between Shiva and Vishnu, there was conflict between Shiva and Shaktis. There were internal conflicts within Hinduism as a broader meaning as we know today.
Okay.
But there were internal subsects within the Hinduism as a larger religion, and there were conflicts between them. Okay. That was one issue. The other issue was there were certain practices which were extremely ritualistic.
Okay.
So it's kind of called as kapalikas, and their forms of worship had extreme forms of elements around sacrifice and rituals, which again alienated a lot of people away from religion in general.
Okay.
And there was also the fact that there was Buddhism and Jainism as other forms of religion also there. So the combination of these multiple things meant that there was a certain degree of integration that was needed.
Okay.
So the biggest contribution in my view of what Shankaracharya did is integrating different forms of worship into a common rule book of sorts. Okay? And it is called as Shanmata Stapana.
Okay.
Shan as in six.
Okay.
Mata is sort of forms of worship. So Shanmata Stapana is 6 forms of worship or 6 systems of worship. That Shankaracharya basically integrated different forms of worship. So what all were these forms? It would be Shiva, which is Shaiva tradition, Vishnu, which is Vaishnava tradition, Shakta, which is Devi tradition of worship, Ganapati, which is Ganapati, Kaumara, which is Subramanya, and then Saulam, which is Surya.
Okay.
So this is the 6.
Okay.
Ganapatyam, Kaumaram, Vaishnavam, Shaivam, Shaktam, and Saulam.
Alright.
These 6 form what is called as Shanmata Stapana or Shanmata Upasana, or 6 forms of worship, 6 systems of worship.
Okay. So is it like maybe it's like outside the question. So the people who were into Shiva's devotion, were they already not worshipping Muruga or Kumara and also Ganapati?
Yeah. Nice question. So within the 6, you would naturally feel that 4 out of 6 are like one family.
It's a monopoly.
Right? Yeah. So yes, it is true. So what happened is, even though there were these different forms, there were certain slight variations in how the forms were worshipped.
Okay.
So Shiva used to be worshipped in some of the extremely ritualistic ways and means.
Which is the Aghoris
and those sort of ways. So that alienated a lot of people from Shiva worship in general.
Okay.
So there was a need for, I'm in no way saying that form of worship is not appropriate, not correct. It's just that different forms of worship.
Everybody is not favorable.
Yeah, so there's what's called as right-handed path of worship and left-handed path of worship. So there's Vamachara and Dakshinachara. So what we are talking about predominantly is the Dakshinachara Paddhati, and Vamachara Paddhati is more of a tantric style of worship. So in the Dakshinachara Paddhati, which is more of the worship that we are into, where it's more sattvic in the way the relationship between human and God exists. In that worship, Shiva was sort of slightly alienated in common place because of certain extreme forms of the way it was worshipped. Okay. So there was a need for bringing that back into the fold, and that is why Shiva also comes into the fold of the six.
Okay.
And Ganapati and Subramanya, though there is both forms in the worship form, very often they are also seen in an integrated way.
Okay.
So it's called a Soma Skanda. Right. So have you heard Soma Skanda as a term?
The word Soma.
And yours is Skanda.
Yeah.
So Soma is Shiva and Skanda is Muruga. So there's a form where it's called Soma Skanda.
Okay.
Where Subramanya is also considered along with Shiva itself and not worshipped separately.
Okay.
There are in other ways, there are also the conceptualization that Ganapati and Subramanya are considered together. And it's sort of in one form, both of them are worshipped.
Okay.
If you look at how this translates from worship in temples, so in temples we will see gods in an idol form. But if you look at it from a household level, it's a very different way in which the puja happens in a regular household, for instance. I mean, let me take my own household in Trivandrum.
Okay.
What we have at home is something called as Panchayatana Puja.
Okay.
Pancha as in 5, Ayatana as in pillar. So it's like 5 pillar worship. Or you naturally ask me, I told you 6, now why did it come to 5?
Yeah.
Okay. That is because Subramanya, as you rightly asked in the question, Subramanya is often conceptualized together with Ganapati.
Okay. So they are one pillar then.
They are considered into one.
Okay.
So the way this Panchayatana Puja worship works is depending on which sect of the larger 5 or 6 you're coming from, you will take that Devata as the central Devata. So in my case, I am coming from the Shaiva tradition. So at my home, we have a Shiva that will be at the center of the Panchayatana. So it's 5, right? So Shiva will be at the center. And then we would have Ganapati and Devi. And then we would have Vishnu and Surya.
Okay.
So that is how the structure of the puja looks like.
Okay.
Okay. This again is a major contribution that Shankaracharya had to the religion, where it was not just how you set up worship in a larger temple setting, but he also brought that worship into what happens in households.
Okay.
That's a big contribution, right? So it's the distance between Lord and the human was getting reduced, because at the end of the day, it's Advaita philosophy that Shankaracharya eventually is getting towards.
Yeah.
And these are mechanisms by which he was trying to communicate that to the world.
Okay.
The other mechanism of how we communicated this is in temple, you would see Lord in a form. There's a murti. So if you look at Ganesha would have an elephant face. If you look at Subramanya will have a veil in his hand, things like that. But when he transitioned from what you see in temple to what you see in households, there was a change from having a form to going into a formless, so semi-form worship.
Okay.
How did this happen? In temple you have a form, but in the Panchayatana Puja that I am talking about, there it is in the form of different types of stones.
Okay.
So Shiva, for instance, you would have typically seen Shiva in a linga form itself.
Yeah.
So Shiva already had that form. But if you look at the Panchayatana Puja at home, the stone for Shiva comes from a very particular place.
Okay.
So it's called Banalinga. It comes. So Shankaracharya again had a lot of national integration viewpoint in how he went about doing things.
Okay.
So the Panchayatana Puja is constructed in such a way that each of the different stones, which are semi-form representations, there's no murti in its.
Yeah.
There's no face and things like that.
Yeah, but it still denotes something.
So basically what Shankaracharya had in Panchayatana Puja is 5 different stones which basically becomes the representations of God.
Yeah.
And these 5 come from different parts of the country.
Okay.
So Shiva is in a form called Banalinga. So it's like a conical stone sort of a form,
Okay.
which you get from Omkar Kund,
Okay.
Navagraha river. That's the place from where you get the Banalinga or that stone.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have Vaishnava, which is a stone that's called saligrama.
Saligrama.
You would have heard saligrama.
Yes.
That comes predominantly from Gandaki river in Nepal. Nepal at that point of time was all part of India. Okay.
Yeah.
So saligram comes from Nepal, Gandaki river. Then you have Ganapati. So Ganapati, it's called Sonabhadra stones. So it comes from the river Son, which is sort of Madhya Pradesh and UP. That's where sort of geographically it is. And it's like a red sandstone of sorts. It's called red Sonabhadra stones. That's how it's called.
Okay.
So that is how Ganapati is represented.
Alright.
And Shatam, which is Devi. Devi comes from, it's called Swarnamukhi stone. It's from a river called Swarnamukhi itself. It's in Andhra Pradesh.
Okay.
So that is like a multicolored stone of sorts. That's the representation of Shakti.
Okay.
The 5th is Sauram, which is Surya. Surya comes in a crystal form.
Okay.
So crystal you would have seen, right? Transparent crystals.
Yeah.
So that was taken from a place called Vallam in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
So you have Tamil Nadu, you have Andhra Pradesh, you have Madhya Pradesh, you have UP, and you have Nepal.
Okay.
So that's absolute national integration across the place because the way Shankaracharya got these different groups together is by undertaking what is called as Shankara Vijaya.
Okay.
That's like a pilgrimage of sorts that Shankaracharya went on, which is called Shankara Vijayam, where he kind of went across the country talking to these leaders of different styles of worship, essentially engaging in a samvada, debate, trying to get them into the fold.
Okay.
So he had debates in Rameshwaram with people of Shiva tradition, he had debates in a place called Anandashayanam with people of the Vaishnava tradition. So he had these debates in different parts of the world. So he had a national integration element in how he approached the whole thing, and at the end of it, he ensured it's all put into a single package.
Okay.
Where it's not just different forms of worship being brought together, but it's also the fact that when you take it home and do worship at your home, the whole country is in your home.
Absolutely.
That's how he kind of brought about Panchayatana Puja as a style from Shanmata Sthapana as the overall style of worship, which is predominantly in temples, but then this is happening at homes.
Okay, so like, so this kind of setup is not like very common from the place, from north, because we have like, so we have a Kula Devata's photo or picture, whatever you have. Then you have your Ishta Devatas, whichever you feel good with, and ideally it will be like Durga, Shri Ram Darbar, Krishna, Radha, and everything. But about these, like the setup of entire stone coming it together, this culture I believe has been a little bit lost in our side, I should say.
So the way this was brought, it's still reasonably prominent. I mean, even in South India, I don't say that every house has this, right? So in my case, it's been like multiple generations where we can continue this. My grandfather used to do it, great grandfather used to do it, my father is doing it now. So when I started picking up some of these things, I picked up knowing about puja and worship because I'm seeing that every day now. We have to do this every day in the morning, right? So I picked up a lot of these things because this happens literally at home every day. But answering the question of how this kind of came into place, even now, if you go to the Shankara mutts, have you heard about the Shankara mutts?
I've heard of the mutts, yeah.
So there are 4 mutts that Shankaracharya had established. So again, there's national integration there. There's one in the north, which is Badri, then Dwaraka in Gujarat, there's Puri, Jagannath in Orissa, and then there's Sringeri in the south. That's like a national integration, all 4 corners covered.
Yeah.
But coming back to the point, in Sringeri, for instance, if you go to Sringeri mutt, they continue to give you this Panchayatana Puja as a puja set of sorts. So the way Shankaracharya brought it into mainstream is to get all these Shankara mutts to sort of popularize this style of worship. And even now, if you kind of go to the Shankara mutts, you kind of get initiated into how you do this Panchayatana Puja, and you can get this set of sorts. So it still exists, but of course, a lot of traditional cultural things have gotten lost over the way, but I do see there's a lot of revival of a lot of these practices, so I think a lot of this will eventually get picked up.
Yeah, obviously. So like I had no idea about like the depth of these things. So now when I go back home, most probably I will be asking the first question to the family, that Purohit who has been, doing all the puja, that where did this chapter go off? So maybe then it will, because the things that I have learned, just being in your association, being in, just the southern side of the India's people, like so much I've learned about even the religion itself, that which is not so known in that part. So which gives us a very deep insight. And thank you so much for going into the depths of these things and enlightening us, Dr. Sreevas. And we look forward for more episodes. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.